Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology turned podcast. Everyone, I hope that you're having a fantastic week and you are ready for today's show. Because today, well, we have the one, the only Mr. Ralph Bond. He'll be joining us here in just a moment to talk all about, a number of great stories, that number being 4, and they're all very good, they're uplifting, they're, especially if you are an 18-month-old girl, then, hey, with hearing problems, hey, this is going to be an amazing show for you. So sit back and enjoy, because, these shows are always some of my favorite. Ralph brings a bunch of stories that are always tech, science focused, and that's very important because his title is, of course, our science and technology trends correspondent. So if you're ready for that, computeramerica.com, that's where you'll find everything, including past shows, future shows, show notes, articles, all that and more, and of course ways to contact us, ways to follow us on social media, so on and so forth. So, with that being said, everyone, again, I hope that you have a fantastic day and you are ready for the show. So let's go ahead, bring Ralph on, and just get things started. And of course, he's, for longtime listeners, Ralph is no surprise. But for everyone else, hey, he's very, very fun and does a great job of breaking down complex stories. As best that we can. Some of these are a bit heady, but no, he does a great job of breaking them down and bringing them to you. So, Ralph, welcome back onto the program. How you been?
Great. It's great to be back. And for first-time listeners or viewers, welcome. I'm glad you're here with us, because on Friday, what Ben and I do, as he was alluding to, is we're going to leave you feeling good, feeling good about what's going on in the world, because there's a lot of bad, but this is all good. And what we do is we look at stuff in robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, space research, physics, you name it. And what we try to do every Friday is give you an oasis of positive news thanks to the world of science and technology. We've got some great stories that fill the bill. Definitely today.
Absolutely. And, if you are simply listening, don't worry. We try to make the show as descriptive as possible. But if you're watching the video portion, you're getting a little bit extra. And, you can see myself, you can see Ralph, and you can see the show notes and, some of the videos and stuff. So we encourage, kind of thinking through the stories that we have today. We're going to kind of show the articles and some of the demonstrations. But if you want to find out more, YouTube, all that good stuff. But Ralph, let's go ahead, and for the people who can see the video, story number 1, for everyone else, let's talk about batteries. And, battery technology is a constant, kind of source for us. And, Ralph, I will say, after talking to just ordinary people, they're so burnt out. And this is just, I want your opinion before we jump into story number 1. People are so burnt out on hearing the next big battery evolution is coming. The next big thing is coming. Should they be burnt out? Should they be skeptical? Or do you think after everything that we've done for months and months and months doing these, do you think that there's hope and there's, progress to a new battery technology?
Oh, Ben, I couldn't agree more. There absolutely is. And friends, our first story is going to be about in this case, solid state batteries. And we're going to explain a little bit about that. But Ben, to respond to your question, I'm very encouraged. The research that's going on in sodium batteries, of course, there's solid state. That's what we're going to talk about here in a moment. But then there's sodium batteries. The idea of, can you take sodium, an extraordinarily common thing, and make viable batteries? And a lot of researchers are saying we are on the path to do that in the next few years. So I think a 5-10 year look out the road here, is very encouraging to me, at least based on the research I'm seeing. Toyota, for example, is really on board with all this kind of stuff. And so just stay tuned and we'll see what's going to happen. Yeah. And by the way, show notes, folks, Ben mentioned this. Come out to computeramerica.com. You'll find the show notes, which will give you links to the articles that I highlight. I don't write or compose this material, folks. I report and gather on stories I think are interesting from a whole host of resources. We give you the highlights, we give you images, we give you links, and I also inject additional educational stuff and additional links as well to amplify on the story. So please come out to computeramerica.com, get those show notes. But with that said, our first story, this is a nugget in a big trend, and the trend is solid-state batteries for cars. And I picked up this story and thought this is a great excuse, if you will, to get into this topic and help clear up a little bit about what solid-state batteries are all about. But the headline here is Nissan steps up all solid-state EV battery plans as a pilot line construction kicks off. So they're getting very involved with this. This story comes from Electrek, that's ELECTREK.com. Great story. And if you're looking at the show notes on the video, you can see right away this very freaky, bizarre looking car. They have a prototype for a solid state battery car.
Yeah, very 80s synthwave kind of, nice sharp lines, but yeah, still very much a test car, a concept car.
Yeah, that's right. And Ben, I'll tell you what, paint that car black and Batman could slide in very easily. So wait a minute, but let's do a little background here. First, what is a solid state battery? Because maybe you and I and many people have been hearing about them, and you might have a general idea of what's going on. But what I did is I'm a Windows 11 user. I have the Edge browser, and of course, there's now the little Copilot AI search option. And so I asked Copilot, give me a little background on solid state batteries. I'm not going to go through all of the information, but just give you the highlights. So a solid state battery is an advanced type of battery that uses solid electrolytes instead of liquid or gel-based electrolytes. And here are some key points about solid-state batteries. And I'm going to just go through the first two. There's much more in the show notes if you want to dig deeper. But in terms of composition, solid-state batteries consist of solid components, including solid electrolytes, cathodes, and anodes. And the solid electrolyte replaces the liquid electrolyte found in traditional lithium-ion batteries, okay? And then a couple of key advantages, and we'll move on to the story. Safety. Solid-state batteries are considered safer because they are less prone to leakage, thermal runaway, as they call it, and fire hazards. We've all heard about the fire hazards. Every once in a while, you'll hear a story. Someone's little lithium-ion battery-powered scooter bursts into flames.
There's a distinct reason why lithium-ion batteries are not allowed to be flown on planes. And thermal runaway is a good way to say blows up. So yeah.
Yeah. And then energy density is another advantage of solid state. They have the potential for higher energy density, which means they can store more energy in a smaller volume. That's interesting. And longevity. Solid state batteries may have longer lifespans due to reduced chemical degradation. Fast charging. They can support faster charging rates compared to conventional batteries. So these things I've just outlined, and again, I'm not going to go into the rest of the background. These things alone, you can see why Nissan and other companies we're going to mention in a moment are going, we need to get into this. We need to figure this out. Now, of course, there's a whole separate research going on with hydrogen-powered vehicles. There's another whole thing going on in the automotive and trucking industry and so forth. But we're going to stay focused here on solid-state batteries.
Right. And of course, as you mentioned at the outset, the other types of, other than lithium-ion, there's sodium-ion, like you said, and many other types of ion batteries. So whole host of solutions, but now solid state.
Yeah. And so with all that setup said, let's get to the news. So Nissan is accelerating all solid-state EV battery development, hoping to make its electric models more competitive. Nissan kicked off construction on its all-solid-state EV battery Yokohama plant pilot line this week. Now, when I say this week, this article was published the 16th of April, with plans to introduce them in a wide range of models, including pickups. A big part of Nissan's strategy includes advanced battery technology. Nissan unveiled plans to launch EVs with all solid-state batteries made in-house by fiscal year 2028. So we're not really that terribly far off. And Nissan believes the new tech will be a game changer for EVs with the potential to offer twice the energy density of traditional lithium-ion batteries at a lower cost. There's your motivation, folks. Twice the energy density of traditional lithium-ion batteries at a lower cost. What's not to like about that?
And really a big part of electric vehicles. And, you know, I recently went on a trip and we had the choice of, you know, getting an electric vehicle. Ralph, like range anxiety and, you know, charging anxiety is still very much a thing.
Yes.
And it's one of those situations where, you know, we had like 800 miles to travel and we were like, okay, this thing makes it 250. So, you know, we're up to stop like 4 times, blah, blah, blah. Ralph, like, even if it was more expensive, just twice the amount of energy in the same space, the same area, I think people would even pay more for that just because, you know, having the energy stored in there ready to use is probably even more valuable than, you know, but don't get me wrong, double good, but, you know, more energy density is king.
Yeah, exactly right. And here's another nugget in why the Nissan and others are interested in this. Nissan also believes solid state batteries can reduce charging times by 1/3 to your point about recharging and so forth. So here we go. More from the story here. In October of 2023, just this past October, Nissan unveiled the Hyperforce EV concept car. And that's photo is in the show notes here. And very weird, the one we said Batman could like if it was painted black. And it's powered by all solid state prototype batteries from Nissan. So that's very interesting. Now, my insert, I thought to myself, okay, who else is right now today, actively pursuing solid state battery vehicle development? So I asked again the AI Copilot in Microsoft to tell me who those companies are. And I've got details here, but I'll just give you the names of the companies in question. No surprise, Toyota. Toyota is really, you know, playing all the cards in the deck when it comes to battery technology. They're looking at hydrogen. They're looking at solid state. They're looking at this. They're looking at that. They are really out there on this front. Anyway, so Toyota is one of them, of course. Another solid state battery exploring companies are Volkswagen, BMW, QuantumScape. That's an unusual one. I didn't even know that existed. Hyundai, of course, and Ford. Good for Ford. Wow. And so remember, these are all in the research and development phase. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But the story about Nissan jumping into this fray is what was the catalyst to bring up the topic about solid state batteries and what's going on.
Some of these are, you know, not even really that far away. Like, for example, you know, thanks to, and AI is proving why it's such a very cool research tool for writing. That you know, not BMW, it was a Volkswagen. 2025, you know, next year we may see cars with, you know, even greater range and stuff like that. So, you know, it's not that, yeah, they may be a year or two ahead and it's going to be even more, blah, blah, blah. But Ralph, everyone's going to have one. Like it's kind of like self-driving cars at this point. If you're not, and honestly, Ralph, I'm surprised that the search result didn't, you know, or the AI didn't return like Tesla. It would be working on this. It seems like a natural, you know, kind of fit for a technology forward car company to do this, but who knows?
Yeah. Well, so, that might be a good Google research. Is Tesla doing something in solid state batteries, and see if something comes up? There may be some activity going on there. Because, of course, Copilot and AI is not infallible. They might have missed something.
Yeah, AI kind of, and I always think back to, you know, one of the early implementations where a lawyer's like, give me relevant court cases and precedent. And then the AI just started making stuff up that didn't even exist. Got that lawyer in a lot of trouble. So there you go. But still, story number one. Let's go ahead and jump on over to story number two. And it's battery technology in a sense, but I'm sure on a much kind of different way. But Ralph, it goes to show that energy storage and energy consumption and what it really means for these advancements and breakthroughs. You know, you can make a bigger battery, a better battery, a solid state battery. Some things just don't have room for a battery, or they don't need a whole battery, but they still need energy. So what can you do? And story number two is honestly something that is a bit geeky, but still has a lot of promise.
Yes, this is geeky, so we'll have a geek alert. And this story comes from a really fun outlet. If you're interested in sustainable energy technology, the outfit's called cleantechnica.com. That's where this story comes from. What we're going to find out is this story is all about, can you do on-chip energy storage in electronic devices? So let me give you the full headline. Groundbreaking microcapacitors could power chips of the future. Scientists developed microcapacitors with ultra-high energy and power density, paving the way for on-chip energy storage in electronic devices. So that's the key, on-chip. And we'll explain this further in a moment here as we get through the highlights of the article. But once again, come out to computeramerica.com, get the show notes. We've got the links. We even have pictures of the two fellows that developed this technology. It's really a fun story, but it is geeky. So here we go. Capacitors are one of the basic components of electrical circuits, but they can also be used to store energy. Now, unlike batteries, which store energy through electrochemical reactions, capacitors store energy in an electric field established between two metallic plates separated by a dielectric material. Time out. What's dielectric? A dielectric is an electrical insulator that can be polarized by an applied electric field. Yes, this is geeky. Capacitors can be discharged very rapidly when needed, allowing them to deliver power quickly, and they do not degrade with repeated charge-discharge cycles. That's very important, giving them much longer lifespans than batteries. But, and here's the big however, however, capacitors generally have much lower energy densities than batteries, meaning they can store less energy per unit volume or weight, and that problem only gets worse when you try to shrink them down to microcapacitor size for on-chip energy storage. That's the setup. That's been the problem to date. Here comes the innovation in a moment. In the ongoing quest to make electronic devices even smaller and more energy efficient, researchers want to bring energy storage directly onto microchips, reducing the losses incurred when power is transported between various device components. So there was the problem. Here's the motivation. And to be effective, on-chip energy storage must be able to store a large amount of energy in a very, very small space and deliver it quickly when needed, requirements that can't be met with existing technologies to date.
So you have the capacitor that can do what you need, but it just doesn't have the density, and that seems to be a big part of it, the very, very small space part. So
exactly right. I mean, there was this motivation that scientists knew that, gosh, if we could just pull this off, this would be really a helpful thing. It could help reduce the size of electronics and so on and so forth, reduce that issue of the transfer of energy from some energy storage device to the chip itself. Can we, reduce that or maybe even eliminate it perhaps in some cases? So there's all the big setup. Here's the story. Addressing this challenge, scientists at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory and University of California, Berkeley have achieved record high energy and power densities in microcapacitors made with engineered thin films of hafnium oxide and zirconium oxide, using materials and fabrication techniques already widespread in the chip manufacturing world. So, two elements that are well known to the chip making world and fabrication techniques well known to the chip making world come together here in a formula these fellows have come up with. It's geeky, but it's really cool. And in the show notes, if you're interested, I have a little bit of background I injected on hafnium oxide and also zirconium oxide. I'll skip over that, though, and get on to the story here. The findings of this research team, published in the journal Nature, and we have a link for that as well, paved the way for advanced on-chip energy storage and power delivery in next-generation electronics. So this is really a trend story, to say the least. And here we go. So a fellow named Saif Salahuddin, I hope I'm saying that right, the Berkeley Lab facility senior scientist and UC Berkeley professor who led the project, noted, quote, "We've shown that it's possible to store a lot of energy in microcapacitors made from engineered thin films, much more than what is possible with ordinary dielectrics. What's more, we're doing this with a material that can be processed directly on top of microprocessors. Now, friends, as is the case with all the stories Ben and I do on Friday, we have thrown a stone over the water here, just skipping the surface, giving you the highlights. But come to the show notes. If you're a geek and you want to really drill down, you can read the articles, especially read the paper published in the journal Nature, and you can geek out to your heart's content. But at least we've given you this forecast of maybe a future where you have on-chip power for microprocessors or microelectronics. Wow, I love it.
I mean, really, we're, especially on the show every other day, like we talk about, system on chip and just how everything is being condensed and, the graphics card is being shared with the processor and this, that, and the other. Like everything, Ralph, is like either integrating or it is fusing together or, being adapted to work. I'm totally seeing a world where, technology like this, where, you get you think like little mini circuit boards and little mini, kind of system on chips and these robots. And this is just taking another little piece of that and maybe even, reducing the battery size or integrating the battery onto the chip itself. And they can just shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink. And Ralph, I'm thinking of some of the past stories where you have, one that immediately comes to mind was that pill that you swallow and it vibrates inside your stomach and it kind of tells your brain that, my stomach's full, and it's just this little vibrating pill. Ralph, imagine that, but even smaller. So it's even easier to swallow. It's not that big of a deal, pass through, all that good stuff. And it's just even more efficient and, little things like that. So many different areas would benefit from this, and it's still very, very cool research. So I like it.
Yeah, it is.
I like it a lot. Story number 2 is completely, it seems like cutting edge stuff. Story number 3 is, reduce, reuse, recycle. Always a good phrase to keep in mind. Recycling is pretty cool because, especially here in the United States, trains built America. But when it comes to train technology, boy, are we kind of stuck in the 1800s. Trains are kind of seen as old hat. They're not really innovated upon. And story number 3, I think, does a great job of saying, just because you have all this infrastructure doesn't mean you need tens of billions of dollars to rip it out and put in something new. Maybe there's a way to recycle or reuse.
Yes.
Ralph, story number 3.
This is a great setup for the story. I'm going to give you the headline. I absolutely love this story. So this comes from an outlet that's on MSN. It's called The Cool Down, and they have some great stories. They're sort of like Clean Technica in terms of covering great stories in energy, sustainability, and innovation. So the headline here is a company develops innovative magnetic train that can operate with existing infrastructure. Now, if I had written the article, I would have just gone right on to say that can operate with existing railroad tracks. And you're going to find out why this is so important and why didn't somebody think of this years ago? Because magnetic levitating trains is not exactly brand new. But these guys in Italy, my hat goes off to these guys. This is a great story. So we've got a video you can see. We have another really good video I found where this fella really walks you through the technology if you want to geek out. The show notes, if you're watching the video, shows the two developers here with their prototype engine, if you will. And let's get into this story. So Italy's Iron-Lev, that's IRONLEV, so for levitation short, has developed a magnetic train engine that works on existing tracks. Now, it's time out. You might think, okay, that's nice. Well, so what? Well, all the magnetic levitation trains currently in the world run on customized tracks. And so these fellas said, well, wait a minute. Like Ben alluded to really make magnetic levitation train technology a reality, we can't expect the world to rip out gazillion miles of existing rails. Can we do something? Can we create a magnetic levitating engine that can use rails? They say answer yes. And as the article says, it's a part of a fascinating breakthrough in the magnetic levitation rail world that could reduce cost, noise, and air pollution. Yeah, very cool. So the video clip of the tech in action, part of a recent test, shows a trapezoid-shaped 1-ton vehicle moving on a railway in the countryside. And the test covered about 1.2 miles outside of Venice, Italy, hitting a speed of 45 miles per hour. And that video is fun to watch. That's some very cool stuff, Ben. And it works by utilizing the physics of magnetism to provide lift, push, and pull. The secret is a cushion of air created between the vehicle and the track, allowing it to travel smoothly and quietly. That's why people have been interested in magnetic rail technology and why it's been implemented in the world in various places, but with customized tracks. Okay, so Iron-Maglev chairperson Adriano Girotto, I hope I'm saying that right, said, quote, "Some of our competitors have carried out tests on specific tracks built to accommodate a magnetic levitation vehicle. We have demonstrated that our vehicle can levitate on an existing track. You can imagine that this makes it an easily usable technology." Oh, yeah, it does. And then I went to AI, Copilot on AI and said, hey, who out there has maglev trains in action today, right now? No surprise, a lot of it's in Asia. So we have the Shanghai Maglev in China, Li Nemo Maglev in Japan, the Daejeon Expo Maglev in South Korea, another one at the Incheon Airport in South Korea, the Changsha Maglev Express in China, and the Beijing S1 Metro line in China. These are all examples of working existing maglev trains, but Ben, on customized tracks.
It's really strange because I knew that maglevs have been a thing, especially in like Japan. I guess is famous for their maglevs because they're so fast. But like to know that it went all the way or operational since 1993. Yeah, that's not exactly a new technology. It's, that's over 30 years ago. That's very, very impressive that it goes back so far. But yeah, please.
Well, impressive too, to your point, with that kind of multi-decade history of this technology be implemented in some parts of the world, to think that nobody thought to themselves, can we make a maglev engine that can run on a conventional regular railroad track? Yeah. That's why I love this story. It's so great. Yep. So Iron-Maglev's ability to integrate existing infrastructure, meaning existing rails, greatly reduces rollout costs. No duh. The company's website notes that its invention could also be used in architecture, industrial settings, and even elevators. Okay.
That'd be cool.
For Iron-Maglev's part, the tech is already in use moving elevators, so their stuff's already out there, as well as loads in industrial work areas. Now, next up, the company plans to make a 20-ton trolley, magnetic lev train trolley, 20-ton trolley that can go 124 miles per hour. You pull this off, and you're really on your way to making this deployable, I think.
Because I was thinking with their tests, and, obviously you need to start small and proof of concept, but, 1,000 pounds is nothing compared to a train. 40,000 pounds, though, that's something. So, and 124 miles an hour, that's crazy.
Yeah, I agree. So let's keep an eye on these guys, because if they pull off this 20-ton trolley and they get it to 124 miles per hour, you can bet your last dollar that the entire rail world will go, what?
Yep.
So if Iron-Maglev's innovation levitates outside of Italy, the author of this article said, your local train could become even smoother, quieter, and healthier. Great. I love it. I just think this story is a hoot and a half.
Yeah, it's one of those stories that makes a lot of sense, and we love it when you can reuse these things, because sometimes stories are like, oh, if you just rip everything out and start over from scratch, we can make this so much better. And it's like, railways are already starved for cash. They're already pushing the limits of what it means to be safe, and I think we heard stories about people working years without days off and stuff like that. But still, to be able to keep their investment in some way in their infrastructure and then be able to improve it, especially in speed and efficiency and all that good stuff. A lot of promise here. And even they would sit up and go, like you said, even they would sit up and go, this is something to pay attention to. So yeah, there you go. Story number 3, very cool. Story number 4, and this is the one that I alluded to, saying that, hey, if you're an 18-month-old girl with hearing problems, you're going to enjoy this show. And that's because story number 4 is medical, and it's it's heartwarming as it is profound. So, Ralph.
Oh, yes. Yeah, this is great. And folks, if you're new to the show, you'll find out that on Fridays, along with the science and technology stories that we usually do all across the board, I like to usually end the show with a medical technology breakthrough. And this one almost brought me to tears. It was so profound and so wonderful. It was widely covered in the medical technology community and in some mainstream press outlets as well. And maybe you've already heard about this story, but I just love it. So this comes from Business Insider, and I have links to other sources as well for this information. Headline: a deaf toddler can hear thanks to a world first gene treatment. And the treatment process took only 16 minutes to administer. Oh, and then how could you resist this headline, right? I mean, I just went, wait, what? We've got a video. We've got all kinds of additional links for you to check out in the show notes. Come out to computeramerica.com, get that information. But let's get into the story. Here's the setup the author put in the article. Around 1 in 500 babies are born with hearing loss or develop it in early childhood, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in the United States. Now, that's the statistic for our country. 50 to 60% of this hearing loss is due to genetic causes. So the World Health Organization estimates that unaddressed hearing loss represents a global cost of $980 billion a year in costs such as healthcare and educational support. No surprise. So here's the story. It's a little girl, 18 months old. Her name is Opal Sandy. Opal, what a cute name. Opal Sandy, who's 18 months old, has auditory neuropathy, a condition caused by a faulty gene. So I said, well, wait a minute. I'm going to go out and get a little side note. I injected some education. What is auditory neuropathy? Well, it's also known as auditory neuropathy spectrum disorder, is a hearing disorder that affects the transmission of sound signals from the inner ear, the cochlea, to the auditory nerve and the brain. So it's a transmission problem. So usually audio neuropathy is treated with implants. But Opal was put on a trial at the Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge, England, which is trialing or experimenting gene therapy on children. And I'm going to stop for a second. So many stories over the past several years have had research breakthroughs coming out of Cambridge, England. Salute to our British buddies over there. They're doing a great stuff. And
for those out there that, sometimes you hear about technologies that you're like, okay, well, wherever did that go? I think a lot of these, Ralph, have to do with CRISPR and the ability to, kind of put genes or deliver genes directly in gene therapy. So everyone out there who's like, oh, you hear about these things and then nothing ever happens. CRISPR is like a prime example of something that is actually improving people's lives. So yeah.
Well, yeah. And not only that, Ben, as you and I have talked about before, you take the combination of CRISPR and you throw in artificial intelligence to do some of the what if, the what if we did this, what if we did that, and in a blink of an eye.
And now you have GMO babies. Yes, exactly.
Yes. So going back into the story here, audio neuropathy is caused by a faulty gene that isn't usually detected until a child is 2 to 3 years old, when delays in speech are more noticeable. That's part of the problem, right? But Opal's was picked up, the little girl in question, was picked up early through gene testing, which she was eligible for because her older sister has the same condition. That's interesting. Now, the condition means the ear can detect sound, but doesn't transmit it to the brain properly, as we mentioned before. It can cause degrees of hearing loss, but in Opal's case, She was fully deaf from birth. I mean, absolutely no hearing.
I kind of sympathize with this, and going to go on a little tangent because, I was born with just constant ear infections. Like I as a baby, I couldn't hear until I was like 3. Very similar to this, but I will say that just personally, my brother growing up, when I was 1 or 2, and my mom never really noticed because, she was working, and, my parents never noticed that, that my brother was actually answering questions for me. Like, my mom would ask me like, oh, do you want more peas? And my brother would answer for me, and she would just give me more peas. And like my sibling was helping, was picking up on the small things that I would do and then answering questions because he could hear, but I couldn't. Ralph, like, kids are very adaptable. That's very good and very bad at the same time because they work around being deaf and you don't really notice, like they said, until 2 or 3. Like, that's a long time. So, hey, that's just kids for you. They're very hard to diagnose, but once you do, hey, what do you do then?
Wow, well, definitely adds a personal note to it. You can relate to this, although your problem was bacterial, I think, as opposed to genetic.
It was the whole tubes in the ear thing, and then it cleared up. So luckily, I can mostly hear now, so we're good.
Well, that's good. And you'd never know your language is perfect. You obviously learned to speak very well.
And last thing I'll say, 3 years of speech therapy. I had a horrible stutter. I think we nixed that. We're pretty good nowadays. Yeah. So there you go. But please, back to the story. Great. I'm sorry.
Yes. So back to our 18-month-old toddler, Opal Sandy. Her treatment was part of a phase 1 of the trial. So we're talking about early research here, folks, where children are given a low dose in one ear. Phase 2 will involve a higher dose still in one ear, and phase 3 will move on to treating both ears at a dose deemed safe from the previous phases. So, folks, we are talking about early stages of this remarkable research. Now, Opal, who lives in Oxfordshire in England, can hear almost normally thanks to a 16-minute-long gene therapy procedure. So it doesn't mean it took 16 minutes and all of a sudden, dang, she could hear. No, that's not what we're talking. We're talking about the procedure. And this is the interesting part, and I'd love to know more about the mechanics of this, but doctors injected Opal's right ear with a harmless virus that carried a working version of the faulty gene while she was under general anesthesia. A harmless virus as a transport vehicle. I love that. That's so interesting. Within 4 weeks of receiving the gene therapy, Opal could respond to sound. After 24 weeks, she had hearing levels that were close to normal, according to a press release from Britain's Health Service. She can hear whispering in her treated ear, respond to her parents' voices, and has even begun saying words like daddy and bye-bye by herself. I mean, it almost brought tears in my eyes. I thought, this is so wonderful. But here's the thing that I would love to understand more. So you use a virus, a harmless virus, as a transport to carry the gene into the ear. How does that gene, what are the mechanics that make that gene suddenly replace the bad gene? What?
Yeah,
as a layperson, I just kind of go, well, okay, I don't understand it. Maybe if I read the in-depth papers and so forth, I might get an inkling of this. But regardless, it works, and it offers tremendous hope for solving a terrible problem of hearing loss in young children.
Yeah, and from what little that I remember reading like a year or two ago when I first heard about this, Ralph, what I liked about it was it's not just like, oh, okay, it's been 3 years, you have to come back in for your next treatment. If everything goes according to plan and and these treatments are effective, it permanently replaces the gene, and it is a lifetime cure. Like it's really incredible what these things do. And yeah, like you said, it's just they picked a family of virus that actually goes into your DNA and kind of alters it. Just like there are genetic markers, going back however long, and you can kind of say, okay, this person had polio, this person had whatever, because it leaves a scar essentially on your genes, and they're using that technology to put in these working genes. It's Ralph, it's almost like taking one of the worst things of nature and turning it into a vessel for cure, and it's so impressive what they're able to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Just, it's so, and friends, that's like, we told you this show on Friday is going to leave you feeling better about the world. A horrible world, but there's also a lot of good in the world. And this is a good example of that.
For sure. So I think that is the end of story number 4. And ladies and gentlemen, if you are following along in the show notes, well, hey, guess what? There's a whole section there called honorable mentions. And as always, these are not second place silver medalists. These are, in fact, just ones that we didn't have time for. So Ralph, let's talk about the honorable mentions. Give them the headlines.
You bet. We'll give you the headlines and the source. We've got the links in the show. You can dive deeper. First one comes from interestingengineering.com, one of my favorite go-to places. Headline, Hong Kong tycoon wants to use space battery tech on Earth. So this is an example of this. There's so much interest about putting devices in space, transmitting radio waves down to the Earth and converting that into energy. There's a lot of interest in these geodesic orbit devices and so forth. This is just an example where you have an individual super wealthy tycoon who's going to try to pull this off, sort of like the Elon Musk of Hong Kong.
Yeah,
great story.
Actually, a complete aside, and I just heard this yesterday. There's a gentleman who led the first completely civilian mission in a SpaceX capsule space. Ralph, he's apparently a pilot and very, very wealthy. Did you know he offered to fix the Hubble Space Telescope so that it would stay in space?
Wow.
I had no idea.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just heard that yesterday.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that he wants to keep that up there.
That's something.
Yeah, who knew? Okay, anyways.
Now, the next headline, how could you resist this? It comes from techexplorer.com. Again, a great thing. And it's a story from the American Chemical Society. Now, think about the credibility of that. Headline, scientists convert chicken fat into energy storage devices. That is so whack.
They didn't need science for that. I do that every day. That's not impressive.
But that's a good one. But chicken fat into energy storage devices. Check it out, folks. We've got the link for you in the show notes. And then the next one comes from Engadget.com. This one's kind of fun if you're into robotics. This hopping robot with flailing legs could explore asteroids in the future. What a great headline, right? And the picture of this little guy is hilarious. You got to check it out. And that's a good one. And then I believe this is our last one here from Fast Company. This Harvard spinoff uses plastic-eating microbes to clean up waste. And Ben, this is just another insert in the ongoing story about people trying to figure out how can we destroy microplastics? How can we decompose plastic waste? So much research all over the world. This is a good example from these folks that created a Harvard spinoff. So check that story out. And that wraps up our honorable mentions for this week.
Absolutely. Oh, a lot of great stories. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to find out more, computeramerica.com, you can find it there. You can find the story there. You can find the show notes there. Everything should be there. And then, of course, the podcast, wherever podcasts are heard, and the YouTube, well, wherever YouTube is found, which is YouTube. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for tuning in and, really just, hey, hanging out with us. It's been a very, very fun Friday. Ladies and gentlemen, hey, if you want to find out more, computeramerica.com. Ralph, I want to thank you again for doing this every week. Very, very consistent. I'm very grateful for you. Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.